You won't believe how this story started because when people looked at him, they only saw confidence, charm, and that $1 million smile. He was everywhere on TV screens, award shows, magazines, and it felt like nothing could touch him. Let me tell you, this was exactly why the truth shocked so many people later. This is how a man the world thought it fully understood slowly turned into one of the most misunderstood figures in entertainment news. And this is where it gets interesting because behind the fame, his life was already breaking apart in silence. For years, the audience believed his life was smooth. He laughed easily, spoke with confidence, and carried himself like someone who had already won in life. But the craziest part was that while fans admired him, he was carrying pain that started long before fame ever found him. His story was never just about success, it was about survival. What makes this story different? Most celebrities hid their past to protect their image. He did not hide it forever. It slowly came out piece by piece through interviews, controversies, and moments he could no longer control. He was born at a time when the world was not kind to difference. His family did not fit into neat boxes, and that alone changed his destiny. As a baby, he did not grow up in comfort or stability. His mother made decisions that looked strange to outsiders, but they were made to protect her child. She packed up her life and left her country, not for adventure, but for safety. Destiny took an unexpected turn right there because those early moves shaped the man he later became, strong, guarded, and always ready to defend the people he loved. As he grew older, he learned discipline early. He dreamed of sports, not acting. Baseball was his world, his plan, his future. He trained hard, believed in his talent, and thought his life was already mapped out. But then life interfered. An injury ended everything in one moment. But here is the shocking part. When that dream died, he had nothing else planned. He felt lost, unsure, and scared. People close to him doubted his next move. Even his family questioned whether he could survive in a new world with no clear direction. He moved forward anyway. That choice changed everything. He stepped into acting without guarantees, without support, and without knowing if he would succeed. At first, it worked. Fame came quickly, and the public fell in love with him. America embraced him as a symbol of charm and strength. But success created a new problem. The more people admired him, the more they assumed his life was perfect. You won't believe how lonely that made him feel. He was surrounded by people, yet emotionally isolated. As his career rose, his personal life became complicated. Relationships came and went. Headlines focused on who he dated, not what he felt. The image of a playboy followed him everywhere, even when he tried to explain himself. Let me tell you, this label slowly trapped him. It became easier for people to judge him than to understand him, and when he did speak, his words were often twisted into something else. Then came the first real cracks in his public image. Old family truths resurfaced. His father was not the hero people expected. There were years of absence, pain, and silence. Prison was mentioned, but never fully explained. This is where it gets interesting because instead of anger, he chose forgiveness. That choice confused people. Why help someone who caused so much pain? What makes this story different? He believed kindness mattered more than revenge, even when the world expected bitterness. While the audience applauded his career, he fought private battles. His mother's health declined slowly, and watching her suffer broke him in ways fame never could fix. He pushed himself harder at work to avoid feeling helpless at home. The craziest part was that he turned pain into action, raising money and awareness, even when his own body was exhausted. Accidents, injuries, and setbacks did not stop him. He kept going because stopping meant facing reality. Just when it seemed like he had survived the worst, controversy started following his name. Online discussions, rumors, and assumptions grew louder. Small moments were turned into big accusations. Silence was taken as guilt. Speaking was taken as arrogance. But here's the shocking part. None of this prepared him for what came next. The image people trusted began to be used against him by others, and his name started appearing in places it never belonged. By the time the public realized something was wrong, the story had already gone deeper. Fame was no longer protection. It was a weapon. And as his life continued to unfold, it became clear this was not a story about a celebrity falling. It was about a man being tested again and again in ways most people never see. You won't believe how fast things started to fall apart after that. Because just when his career looked untouchable, pressure came from every direction. Fame no longer felt exciting, it felt heavy. Let me tell you, success had placed him under a microscope where every move was watched, judged, and often misunderstood. This is how a man known for strength slowly became the center of quiet controversy without even trying. As his popularity grew, tension followed him onto the sets where he worked. People smiled for cameras, but behind closed doors, egos clashed and patience ran thin. But here is the shocking part. The public never saw those moments. They only saw headlines when something went wrong. A single incident became louder than years of hard work. Online forums exploded with theories, and suddenly strangers claimed they knew the truth better than the people who were actually there. He tried to stay calm, to stay professional, but silence made things worse. Fans began reading meaning into every word he posted. A short message about kindness turned into fuel for rumors. This is where it gets interesting, because what he meant as a general thought was taken as a personal attack. The internet chose sides, and he was pushed into a story he did not write. Then came the decision that shocked everyone. He walked away from a role that had defined him for years. To the audience, it felt sudden. To him, it felt necessary. He said he needed air, space, and time. The craziest part was that many people did not believe him. They assumed drama forced him out even when he explained it was his choice. Once again, his truth was drowned out by noise. After leaving, he did not slow down. He jumped into a new project, this time as the center of everything. The pressure doubled. Leadership meant responsibility, and responsibility meant more eyes watching. He trained harder, worked longer hours, and pushed his body beyond limits. What makes this story different? Even with success, peace still escaped him. Winning at work did not fix what was breaking inside. Behind the scenes, his personal life was unraveling. The woman who raised him, protected him, and believed in him was slowly fading away. Her illness controlled their lives. Hospitals replaced happy places. Conversations became shorter, heavier. Destiny took an unexpected turn because no amount of money or fame could save the person he loved most. He smiled in public, then broke down in private. He turned pain into purpose, riding long distances and raising money, hoping effort could turn into hope. Injuries followed him, but he refused to stop. You won't believe how far he pushed himself just to feel useful. At times, his body collapsed before his spirit did. Still, he showed up the next day because giving up felt like betrayal. Just when sympathy should have followed, accusations appeared. A situation at his home turned into headlines that suggested the worst. Police found nothing, no charges were filed. But here's the shocking part, the damage was already done. Once a name is attached to controversy, facts struggle to catch up. People remembered the accusation, not the outcome. Then betrayal struck from inside his circle. Someone he trusted took advantage of his charity, stealing money meant for research and hope. The craziest part was that this betrayal hurt more than public rumors. This was personal. This was real. And yet, he handled it quietly, letting the law take its course instead of turning it into drama. As time passed, a darker issue surfaced. Scammers began using his face, his voice, and his image to trick women looking for love. Let me tell you, this was not just embarrassing, it was painful. Real people lost money, trust, and hope. Courts got involved. Stories went viral. This is where it gets interesting because the world finally saw how fame could be used as a weapon, even against the person who owned it. Meanwhile, his own love life followed a familiar pattern. Passion started strong, but endings came quietly. Fans asked the same question again and again. Why no marriage? What makes this story different? The answer was never simple. Loss had taught him that love could disappear without warning, and commitment felt like a risk he was not sure he could survive again. Then, fatherhood changed everything. Holding his child rewired his heart. For the first time, he felt complete in a way fame never gave him. But here is the shocking part. Even this happiness did not last forever. Cracks appeared, differences grew, and once again, love did not end in hatred, but in distance. By now, his story had become a mix of hope and heartbreak. The public still watched, still judged, still speculated. But underneath it all, a bigger truth waited to be revealed, one that explained his fear, his strength, and his choices. Even after all the fame, awards, and recognition, life continued testing him in ways no one could imagine. You won't believe how much pain he carried behind that perfect smile, because just when it seemed he could finally relax, reality hit him harder than ever. The woman who had raised him alone, the hero of his childhood, was slowly slipping away. Her battle with illness became the quiet center of his life, shaping decisions and forcing him to grow up faster than most adults ever have to. Let me tell you, he had learned early that life could change in an instant, and he never forgot that lesson. This is how the love he had for his mother influenced every other relationship he formed. As she grew weaker, he pushed himself even harder. He cycled hundreds of miles, participated in charity events, and raised money for research, not just to honor her, but because he refused to sit idle while someone he loved suffered. But here is the shocking part. He often collapsed from exhaustion after long rides, only to get up the next day and continue working on set or shooting scenes. Injuries, pain, and exhaustion never stopped him. The public only saw the action hero on screen, but behind the scenes, he was fighting his own battles every single day. This is where it gets interesting, because his resilience was quiet, invisible, and often taken for granted. At the same time, controversies followed him. False accusations made headlines, rumors spread on social media, and strangers judged his character without knowing the truth. The craziest part was that even though he was innocent, his name was dragged into court cases, fake scandals, and social media storms. People assumed the worst, forgetting that the man they adored on TV was human, someone who could be hurt, misunderstood, and betrayed. Destiny took an unexpected turn because fame that once protected him now exposed him to risks he could not control. Romance also became a battlefield. Relationships with high-profile women made headlines, but intimacy was complicated by grief, fear, and past betrayal. He longed for connection but struggled with commitment. Let me tell you, people assumed his reluctance to marry was about ego or fame, but the real reason was deeper. He had seen love come and go, and heartbreak had left scars. Every relationship was a test of his ability to trust, and every decision weighed heavily on him. This is where it gets interesting because even with love in his life, happiness was always fragile. Then came the joy of fatherhood, a moment that changed him completely. At 52, he became a dad for the first time, and his daughter brought him a new purpose. He adored her, protected her, and dedicated everything to her well-being. But here's the shocking part. Even this happiness was shadowed by challenges. His relationship with his partner could not survive, despite their love and shared joy for their child. Differences in lifestyle, lingering fears from past loss, and personal demons made it impossible for them to stay together as a couple. Yet, he never stopped showing love, care, and responsibility. This is how he proved that even when life takes away what you want, you can still give what matters most. Amid all this personal struggle, his career continued. Shows were canceled, fans protested, and networks reversed decisions because of audience outcry. He faced uncertainty repeatedly, and yet he trained, performed stunts, and gave everything on set. The craziest part was that even when projects failed or were threatened, he kept pushing forward. Fame was no longer just a reward, it was a challenge, a responsibility, and sometimes a burden he could not escape. Through scandals, betrayals, and heartbreak, he stayed visible, hardworking, and committed, never letting setbacks stop him. And through it all, the shadow of his father's absence lingered. He rarely spoke about the man who had caused pain in his early life, but when he did, it revealed his true character. Despite abandonment and mistakes, he chose grace over bitterness. He provided a home for the father who had once hurt his family, not because they were close, but because he believed in compassion over revenge. What makes this story different? Even when life handed him cruelty, he responded with humanity. Even as the world watched his life unfold with fascination and judgment, he continued to live quietly in moments of selfless dedication. Pain, betrayal, love, and loss all intertwined in ways that shaped him but never defeated him. He remained strong, resilient, and compassionate, proving that surviving fame and tragedy required far more than charm or talent. It required heart, courage, and a will to rise, no matter how many times life knocked him down. This is where it gets interesting, because the man who smiled for cameras was also a man who faced unimaginable battles every single day, and somehow he refused to break. Even after everything he had been through, life continued testing him in ways most people could never imagine. His daughter became the center of his world, a light in the middle of the storms he had faced for decades. You won't believe how much he changed for her, how every decision he made was now guided by her happiness and safety. Fatherhood gave him purpose, but it also brought new challenges. He had to balance work, public attention, and parenting, all while healing from past heartbreaks. Let me tell you, this was a side of him the cameras never captured. The devoted, patient, and quietly heroic father. Yet, even as he tried to create stability, his personal life remained complicated. Relationships had ended, promises had been broken, and trust had been tested too many times. He loved deeply, but fear of loss and old wounds often kept him from fully opening his heart. But here is the shocking part. Even with all this, he continued to love, continue to care, and continue to give. People assumed that once a relationship failed, he would withdraw, but he never did. Every act, every choice reflected the strength he had built from decades of struggle. At the same time, his career continued to demand everything from him. Shows were canceled and revived, roles required physical endurance, and public scrutiny never eased. This is where it gets interesting because despite cancellations, rumors, and controversies, he maintained his work ethic, performed his own stunts, and showed up for his colleagues and fans, never letting setbacks define him. The public saw the action hero, the leading man, the confident star, but few realized the layers of perseverance, pain, and sacrifice beneath. And then there was the truth about his father, the man who had abandoned him and caused pain early in his life. Even after decades, he chose compassion over revenge, buying a home for his father when he needed help. What makes this story different? Most would never forgive such betrayal, but he did. That choice revealed a side of him that was stronger, wiser, and more resilient than fame alone could ever show. He carried the lessons of abandonment, love, and forgiveness into every relationship, every role, and every decision he made. Even with heartbreak, betrayal, illness, scams, and loss, he continued to rise. He became a father, a public figure, a survivor, and a role model all at once. The craziest part is that he endured not because life was easy, but because he refused to let adversity define him. Fame, fortune, and public image were just the surface. What truly mattered was his heart, his determination, and his love for those who needed him most. Destiny took an unexpected turn, but he faced it with courage, grace, and resilience, showing the world that even when life knocks you down, it is possible to keep standing. In the end, he became more than just a star on screen. He became a symbol of perseverance, compassion, and strength. This is how one man, through heartbreak, scandal, and unimaginable challenges, stayed true to himself and those he loved. He smiled, he fought, he gave, and he never gave up. And that is the real story. The story of a man who, despite everything, continued to rise and inspire, proving that even in the darkest moments, hope, love, and resilience can shine brighter than anyone could imagine.